I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. A bold, audacious man strode directly to our table, showing no hesitation as he reached for my unfaithful wife's hand. With a sneer curling his lips, he scoffed, "Why waste your time with this weakling? Let's dance first, and then I'll show you what a real man is." Keeping my composure, I responded not with words, but with action. A swift, precise movement, one I had practiced countless times, sent a sickening crunch through the air. His hand fractured under my grip, the agonized screams that followed reverberating through the restaurant. The once lively atmosphere stilled as he collapsed onto the floor, writhing in pain. The restaurant itself was a high-end establishment in Geneva, exuding a quiet, understated luxury. Dim lighting cast a warm glow over polished mahogany tables, while the gentle notes of a grand piano wove through the air. It was a kind of place meant for power lunches and elegant soirees, a world I had once embraced. Yet tonight, it felt like nothing more than a gilded prison. Across from me sat my wife, Amal. Stunning as ever, she possessed an undeniable beauty, her dark hair flawlessly styled, her crimson lips a perfect complement to the sleek, form-fitting evening gown that draped over her. Yet, for all her elegance and poise, her eyes told another story. There was a distance in them, an emptiness I could no longer ignore. 15 years of marriage had bound us together, but in the past 6 months, something had shifted. Late nights at her law firm, cryptic messages, unexplained absences, each had driven a wedge between us, creating a chasm I wasn't sure could be bridged. I had hoped that tonight might offer us a chance to rekindle what was slipping away. Instead, I found myself an outsider, watching the woman I loved drift even further beyond my reach. As we sipped our wine, a shadow fell over our table. I glanced up to see a man in his early 30s, tall, muscular, and radiating overconfidence. His tailored suit fit impeccably, but it couldn't mask the sheer arrogance in his stance. Sharp blue eyes fixated on Amal, dismissing my existence entirely. "Amal," he greeted smoothly, his voice a blend of charm and smugness. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." She froze, her wine glass halting midair, eyes darting between him and me before she managed to speak. "Lucas," she stammered, her voice betraying more emotion than she likely intended. "What are you doing here?" He smirked. "Just enjoying the city." Then, to my utter disbelief, he reached out and took her hand. His grip lingered as he added with a sneer, "Why stay with him? Let's dance first, and then I'll show you what I have to offer." A hush fell over the restaurant. Conversations halted, and I felt the weight of curious eyes pressing upon us. Amal made an attempt to pull her hand free, but Lucas held on, his audacity stoking a slow-burning rage within me. I rose from my seat, the scrape of my chair slicing through the silence. My voice remained even, but there was no mistaking the danger laced within it. "You have 3 seconds to let go of her hand." Lucas turned his smug gaze on me. "And if I don't?" What followed was swift. A sharp crack punctuated the air, his bones snapping beneath my grip. The restaurant fell deathly silent as he collapsed, clutching his shattered hand. His screams filled the space, drawing every eye toward our table. Amal gasped, her face a mixture of shock and fear. The other diners sat frozen, unable to look away. "Magnus," she hissed, her voice shaking as she grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" I ignored her, crouching down to meet Lucas's pain-stricken gaze. My voice dropped, low and merciless. "This is just the beginning," I murmured, devoid of sympathy. "You made a mistake tonight, and I'll make sure you regret it." He glared up at me, agony twisting his face. Through clenched teeth he spat, "You'll pay for this." Straightening, I turned to Amal, who remained frozen in her seat. My voice was calm, firm. "Let's go." I spoke with an icy finality. Amal hesitated, her wide eyes flickering between me and Lucas. When she still didn't move, I snapped, my sharp tone slicing through her hesitation. At last she stood, the click of her heels against the polished floor marking each reluctant step as she followed me out. Behind us, the restaurant filled with murmurs, hushed at first, but quickly growing into a low hum of speculation. The car ride home was suffocating. Silence wrapped around us like a thick fog, heavy and stifling. Amal sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her breathing shallow. I could almost see the frantic workings of her mind as she struggled to piece together an explanation, something, anything, that might justify what had just unfolded. The moment we pulled into the driveway, I killed the engine and turned to her. "Talk." My voice cut through the stillness like a blade. She flinched, her fragile composure shattering. "Magnus, I don't know what you expect me to say." Her whisper was barely audible, her gaze locked onto her lap. I leaned in, my patience long since eroded. "I expect the truth. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" Tears brimmed her eyes, but they stirred nothing in me. I had exhausted my sympathy long ago. "It's complicated," she began, but I silenced her with a bitter laugh. "Complicated," I echoed, my voice laced with venom. "Let me make it simple. Either you tell me everything now, or I'll uncover the truth myself. And trust me, you won't like how that plays out." Her shoulders sagged, the last remnants of resistance draining from her. 6 months, she admitted, barely more than a breath. "It started 6 months ago, even though I had long suspected it." Hearing the confirmation hit harder than I had anticipated. I inhaled slowly, forcing myself to remain composed. "And tonight?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "What was tonight supposed to be? A public humiliation? A way to throw your betrayal in my face?" "No," she cried, her voice cracking. "I didn't know he would be there, Magnus. I swear." "Stop lying." My words were sharp, cutting through her excuses. "I saw how you looked at him. The way you froze the moment he spoke. You knew." A sob tore from her lips as she buried her face in her hands, her cries filling the small space of the car. I stared straight ahead, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Answers were necessary, but more than that, I needed a plan. The following morning, I sat in my office, the Geneva skyline stretching out before me. My mind churned with cold, calculated resolve. Betrayal coursed through my veins like poison, but I refused to let it consume me. If Amal and Lucas believed they could walk away unscathed, they were about to learn otherwise. I started with Lucas. A simple online search peeled back the layers of his carefully crafted image. His social media was a shrine to excess, photos of private jets, designer suits, and luxury cars carefully curated to project success. But beneath the polished surface, cracks ran deep. Failed business ventures, lawsuits, whispers of underhanded dealings. Lucas was far from untouchable. I reached out to my network, people in finance who owed me favors and thrived on exposing fraud. Within hours, I had a damning report in my hands. Bank records revealed a man drowning in debt, living a lifestyle he couldn't afford through unpaid loans and reckless investments. It was more than enough to destroy him. But I wasn't finished. Next, I turned my attention to Amal. While she carried on, pretending our lives were still intact, I worked in silence, gathering every shred of evidence I could find. Emails, text messages, photographs. Proof of her affair carefully stored in a secured digital folder. This wasn't about revenge. It was leverage. If she chose to challenge me in the divorce, I wouldn't hesitate to use it. The final step? Ensuring their downfall played out for everyone to see. I orchestrated Lucas's downfall with precision. Through carefully placed connections, I ensured he received an exclusive invitation to a prestigious charity gala, an event frequented by Geneva's most influential figures. At the same time, I made certain that a dossier detailing his financial fraud and predatory dealings landed in the hands of a journalist notorious for exposing scandals. By the time the evening concluded, Lucas's crimes were no longer whispers in darkened rooms. They were front-page news across Switzerland. Amal faced her reckoning soon after. When I presented her with the divorce papers, she tried to protest, but the mountain of evidence rendered any denial meaningless. Our ironclad prenuptial agreement ensured she walked away with nothing, while the court of public opinion sealed her social exile. The aftermath unfolded swiftly. Newspapers and media outlets plastered bold headlines across their front pages. High society deception. Lucas Hine exposed for fraud and manipulation. The report dissected every detail of his illicit activities, financial scams, blackmail, and his calculated exploitation of wealthy women. His once pristine reputation crumbled overnight. Forced into hiding, he vanished from public view, while authorities launched a formal investigation, freezing his assets and seizing whatever they could. The very people who once praised him now distanced themselves, eager to avoid being dragged into his disgrace. Amal fared no better. The hushed gossip of high society soon grew into open disdain. Friends disappeared, invitations ceased, and the social circles she once thrived in shut their doors. Her family, mortified by the scandal, quietly severed ties, leaving her to face the consequences alone. When we met in court for the finalization of the divorce, she was a shell of the woman she had once been. The poise and confidence she once carried had been stripped away, replaced by weary eyes and quiet desperation. As we stepped outside the courthouse, she hesitated before speaking, her voice unsteady. "Magnus," she whispered, "I know I hurt you, but was all of this really necessary?" I held her gaze, unwavering. "You made your choices, Amal." My voice was calm, resolute. Choices have consequences. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. Instead, she simply nodded and walked away without another word. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. The house, once suffocating with tension and unspoken resentment, now felt lighter, peaceful. I threw myself into my work, securing high-stakes deals and expanding my firm's reach across Europe. The sting of betrayal still lingered, but with time it dulled, replaced by a sense of clarity and renewed purpose. One evening, I attended another charity gala. This time, I entered not as a man weighed down by the past, but with quiet confidence. As I moved through the room, a light touch on my shoulder caught my attention. Turning, I found myself face to face with a woman whose presence radiated intelligence and grace. "Mr. Adler," she greeted warmly. "I'm Isabel Forer, a historian. I've heard a great deal about your work. It's quite remarkable." We spent hours in conversation, her sharp wit and depth of knowledge a refreshing contrast to the superficial pleasantries I had grown accustomed to. For the first time in years, I felt something real, an undeniable spark. A reminder that life, despite its trials, still held moments of beauty. Later that night, I stood on the balcony of my home, gazing over the city lights stretching endlessly before me. The road had been painful, but it had also shaped me into something stronger. Lifting a glass of wine to the night sky, I murmured words that had become my mantra. "Pain sharpens us. Resilience shapes us." As I turned to step inside, one final thought lingered in the cool evening air. Betrayal can break you, but renewal will rebuild you.